Sorry I'm late. Can you guys hear me? Awesome. Sorry I'm late. I was trying to do it a different way, but it said that I downloaded the encoder thing, but it some kind of an error. So just did it the easy way. I'm not very tech savvy. Most of you already know that. Hey, Stormy, Matt, Jake, G Skid, Samantha, Ryan. Glad you guys could make it. Oops. I had a little sheet of stuff I was going to discuss. I don't know what I did with it. Oh, well. Gary, Ken, Ryan. I make fun and say that, that I blame it on COVID, but I really have a really tough time with my memory since COVID. Real immediate recall memory. I'll eventually remember stuff, but I can't even watch Jeopardy anymore. It's no fun because I can't recall that stuff. It's crazy. I've always been the kind of person that couldn't remember why I got up and went in the kitchen, but it's an issue now. Excuse me. There it is. I just set the computer on top of it, that's all. Well, this is your guys' deal. If you have questions, anything you want to discuss, anything you want me to discuss. Let's see. Did that help the quality any? Okay. I'm not always so sure how much light I should put on my face, but well, one of the things I'll start off with is I've had a few people ask about good days and bad days on the Tehachapi. For Mondays are bad days to train watch on the Tehachapi. Hey, Smart Trip guy from Colorado. I was just in Colorado last month, but Mondays are bad days because they call it Maintenance Monday. I don't know if that's the case on all railroads or any other railroads, but it is the case on the Tehachapi, and they generally do maintenance between 8 and about 4, generally when the window is if they have something going on. A full B. And right now they have a rail gang up there. Some of you saw the video that I did about the ribbon rail train laying out the rail, and they've got a gang following that. I also shot a video of the work train going ahead of that, putting off the pads and plates and the things they're going to use to lay that rail. That hasn't gone up yet, but that work train is still at Woodford, and I don't know where the rail gang is. Last time I heard they were at Cliff, which is too remote for me to go shoot. I'm hoping to catch them at Woodford. But anyway, as far as I know, that's the only work still going on. I followed the bridge change at Cable up by where the derailment was, and I caught a lot of video of them doing lots of stuff, but I couldn't get the video. They did the actual bridge replacement when they actually put the new decks in the middle of the night during a rainstorm, and I wasn't going to try to get in there where I shoot that from and get stuck. But I'll put those videos, 3 pieces. I'll go out there and shoot what it looks like now, but it was a heck of a job. Jonathan B., I can't use my drone. The drone that I have will not operate with my phone. The company, DJI, I guess they haven't upgraded their whatever. I don't know anything about it, but when I hook it up to my phone, it won't do anything. But I will, I don't know, maybe eventually get another drone. Let's see. G-Skid, you saw the decline of the SP and mentioned vouchers. What negative effects did you personally witness operationally? Personally, the only thing at Southern Pacific that affected me personally was we were constantly they were cutting jobs, which was causing us to be bumped around. Back then it was the San Joaquin division, and there were headquarters at Palmdale, Bakersfield, and Tulare and Fresno. I never actually ended up headquartered in Fresno. Excuse me. Dang it. But I worked at all the other places, and I was always getting bumped around. We would be in the middle of a project especially when I was a gang foreman, we would be in the middle of a project and they'd take us off of it because they ran out of money. And we had a lot of half-finished projects going on. Eventually we got back and finished them all, but it was a nutty time. I don't think that I was treated badly by Union Pacific. I'm not one of those guys that expected to be patted on the head. I never have been. I had a job to do. When I went to work there, I agreed to do a job, and they agreed to pay me for it. And beyond that, I wasn't interested in anything else. UP was a lot more regimented, that's for sure. You couldn't get away with the stuff at UP that you got away with at SP. They expected things to get done, and there was no slouching or dragging your heels. They would definitely call you on the carpet. I spent my entire career, except for the last few months, as a foreman, and I was expected to get things done and see to it that my guys were getting things done. But I don't think, in my opinion, I don't think we were treated badly. There were people at SP who treated you like crap too, but it was a more familial place to work. Smart Trip Guy 118. Yeah, up there by Fountain. Yeah, I was completely, as I said in those videos, I was completely lost as to where everything went, but it was really cool. What a beautiful place to see trains go by and shoot some videos, and I managed to catch that one with both of them going by. It was really cool. James Cotter, the derailment at Cable. I went to that the day I was leaving for vacation, and they weren't doing anything else. I think the last video I caught of them doing something when they were venting the LPG cars. But there are still 2 auto racks lying there on their sides. On the inside of the curve. They got the 2 LPG cars and the 1 auto rack out of there, but everything else is still laying there, all the axles and everything. Ryan Canterbury, hello. Glad you could make it. I'm trying to enjoy my retirement. If I can quit hurting myself and not get sick again, I say that I hurt myself and almost died of COVID, but it still beats working for a living. Yeah, we have a lot of joint facilities out here. There's a joint facility on Cajon Pass, up where the UP goes from Los Angeles to Barstow, and then or to Daggett actually, and then splits off and goes north through Vegas, and then we have the Tehachapi. And there are a couple of other areas that I never worked on the Cajon Pass, but I knew that there was a joint facility there. But yeah. Brian Benson, hello. This question is about how long you've been playing guitar. What kind of music do you? Brian Benson asked how long I've been playing guitar and what kind of music I like to play. I've been playing since I was 15, 1975, and I didn't take it seriously until I was about 20. And so I've been playing I always tell people I've been playing long enough that I ought to be better than I am. And I'm a classic rocker. So when I'm playing my electric, that's what I generally like to play. But when I'm playing my acoustics, I play country and folk and whatever. I'm not real picky. I enjoy learning a lot of cool stuff. And whatever tickles my fancy at the time. I hear a song and I want to learn how to play it, so I'll learn it. I haven't played for more than just a few minutes since before I hurt my shoulder and before I got sick. I just haven't had I was too sick for a long time, and I didn't have the movement in my shoulder even after I got better. And then I haven't had time lately. Hey Train, how you doing? Samantha, on derailments as a signal maintainer, if nothing signal related was damaged, do you have any? No, they didn't. If they'll go out, they'll generally, unless they know it's out in the middle of nowhere, we don't have anything, they'll generally send a maintainer out there to check it out. And if nothing of ours is involved, they'll just go home and we won't have anything to do with it until the end. If they put panels in, they'll have somebody go out and bond the rail. But other than that, we don't do anything. We don't have anything to do with it. And a couple of weeks ago, Smart Trip guy, a couple of weeks ago on the BNSF high rail, BNSF high rail on Main 1 while the coal train was on Main 2. Yep, see that a lot here. High railers, they run the territory every day, and they're bound to meet up with trains on the double track or in sidings. Full B, regarding signaling, what voltages are on the rails for detection? Is it AC or DC? The current signal system runs on pulses, DC pulses, and the voltage is very low. The high pulse is a volt and a half, a volt, 1.8 volts or something like that. And let's see, how's it put into place if it's AC generated up the line? No, it's the only AC stuff we have is overlay circuits for crossing approaches and places like that, detectors, and they're just low voltage AC circuits, and they're set up that way so they don't interfere with the DC track circuits. And they use they're called AC generators, and they run off the 12 volts or off everything in the house runs off 12 volts or 24 volts depending, and they have rectifiers that swap the AC to DC, and then they run that back through an AC generator, and we use that for a few applications. I hope that answers your question. Xavier Gutierrez, thank you. I love giving tours of the museum. I plan on doing other museums in the future. They won't always be railroad museums, but I love history of every kind. So I'll get some more museums in there. Michael White. Hello, Michael. My question for you is, how were trains allowed to travel to Ashby using the pass? I'm not sure I understand your question. Let's see if I can get back down there. How were trains allowed to travel the Tehachapi Pass? Are you talking about running on all the railroads, both railroads running on the same line? Kurt Longquist. Is Tehachapi more strenuous on trains? The Cone Pass is a pretty steep climb too, but it doesn't have the curvature that Tehachapi has. It runs more through not going to say straight, but it doesn't have the curvature, doesn't have the tunnels, but it is I'm not exactly sure. I'll cheat here. Let me see what the grade is at my handy dandy timetable. Oops, that's the wrong one. Bear with me. I'll get back to your questions. Let me run out and get my other timetable, my LA timetable. Okay. The other one is the Roseville area that covers everything from Bakersfield north. Not everything north, but I believe it goes to Roseville, maybe further than that. All right. The average grade on in Cajon is about 2.2, so it's about the same as Tehachapi, a little bit less. Tehachapi is a little steeper in some places, but it's still quite a climb. I don't know if you all maybe saw the video that I just did of my first time at Cajon Pass. I went up there and shot some trains, and they were pulling hard coming up that part of the hill. And Michael White, you're welcome. I love sharing my knowledge and adventures of the Tehachapi Pass. I have a lot of history up there. It was an interesting and fun place to work. We worked our butts off up there a lot, but it was still fun. I enjoyed working up there. And when I worked up the valley for all those years, I'd get called out on a trouble call, or maybe one of the guys I'd have to go up there for some other reason to help them do something. And I always enjoyed getting away and getting up there because it was so noisy up the valley along Highway 99. It was so peaceful on Tehachapi, even with the trains, and even if you were working, it was still a neat place to you could hear yourself breathe up there. It's nice. Whoops. Hobo Joe from Pennsylvania. Hey, welcome. Yes, we do have some abandoned stuff out here. I'm actually doing a piece on the abandoned. It's called the East Side Branch. It ran from just north of Bakersfield, a place called Formosa, up to Fresno. It was actually considered the B main at one time, but it was built to access all the agriculture over on the east side of the valley, San Joaquin Valley. And it was sold in 1994 by Southern Pacific, or leased anyway, to San Joaquin Valley Railroad. They've been operating it ever since, but they pulled up the section from Formosa up to a place called Lindsay, which is closer up to Fresno. So a lot of that rail is gone, but I'm doing a piece on that. I started it about 2 years ago, and with all my injuries and illnesses, I just never got around to finishing, but I'm going to do that. Also, the upper end of the Lone Pine Branch, which was abandoned in 1980, 82 or 83, I can't remember now, after the tunnel fire. That rail was pulled up in the 90s, but I want to do a piece on that. And now that I got my KTM, I can get out in some of those really remote places and shoot some good footage. But we do have a lot of old abandoned places around here. Quentin Allison, what about track maintenance? What about it? There's a lot to it. I'm not a track guy, but I sure did work around it a lot. Jim Fairchild, also retired. Awesome. Fool, yeah. Low voltage, even in the old relay logic, track circuit voltages were never over 2 volts. Danny Turner, welcome. Thank you. You know what's I don't consider it work. It's something I decided to do just before I retired, and I really enjoy doing it. And sometimes it's hard work by choice. When I decide to go traipse around climbing up hills and getting different angles and shots, it's like I said in one of my videos. I don't remember now that I don't have to go do this stuff. I kind of enjoy doing it. I'm more of a train fan today than I ever was while I was working. I've learned to really appreciate the railroad as the railroad and not as a place I work. And that's become really nice. I enjoy that. Mark Bushnell. Hi, Mark. Yeah, James Cotter. I wanted to see the Moffett Tunnel, but I'll get back up there. I have a daughter who lives in Denver. It always gives me a reason to go up there. And I probably could have gone up there. One of the guys there at Central City said that I could probably get up there, but I don't like probablys when I'm 1,000 miles from home. And the weather was terrible. It was sunny, but the wind was blowing 900 miles an hour. Oh, Michael White, yes, if you're saying yes about the joint facility, that came about in 1898 when Southern Pacific had already come through here. In 1876, was called the San Francisco and San Joaquin Valley Railroad at the time, before Santa Fe bought it. And it arrived in Bakersfield in 1898, and they had no way to get over the mountain into Los Angeles. And they did some surveys, one over what's called the Grapevine directly south, and another one up through what we call the Sheep's Trail today outside of Arbon. But they entered into a joint facility agreement with Southern Pacific as soon as Santa Fe took over, and that agreement has been in place ever since. And Santa Fe made some noise about pushing their own line over above Arbor. It would have come out on the east side of Tehachapi at a place called Stallion Springs and went in through town that way. But Southern Pacific said, if you start doing that, we'll revoke your right to run on the tracks, and you won't be able to get over the mountain for the 2 or 3 years that it takes you to build that line. And a lot of historians say that Santa Fe never intended to do anything. They just wanted to ensure the longevity of their agreement with Southern Pacific. They did some crazy stuff back then. Brian Simpson, howdy from Ventura. It's one of my daughter's favorite places. I don't get over there very often. We were over there visiting some friends and some subscriber, the Griswold family over in, now I can't remember the name of the town. They live in just this side of Ventura. Completely escapes me. They're telling you. COVID brain fog. Mojave Sub Matthew, hey, how you doing? And see your comments on there occasionally, and always appreciate those of you who comment. Which deity is better? Nobody, you guys can you hear me at all? Let's see. Oh, okay. Okay. There's some people saying they couldn't hear me. Yeah, if I'm freezing on this, my office here in the house is in the back room, and it's same with my phone. It cuts in and out. I'm sorry. Uh, we even have a extender thingamajig in the bedroom, and it still doesn't seem to help. It's annoying, I know. Sorry. Smart Trip guy, which the DD is you're talking about defect detectors? I don't know. I imagine they all work about the same. And I'm not very conversant with BNSF stuff. I learned some of their signal systems because when they bought when the Santa Fe and Southern Pacific sold their branch lines to San Joaquin Valley Railroad about the same time, and San Joaquin Valley Railroad hired a company called American Signal Technologies to take care of their crossings. There were no signals on any of that, and they hired a few SP guys to help get things in order because FRA they had been on the SP and Santa Fe as well to get things up to snuff. So I went to work on the side for AST and learned Santa Fe crossing circuitry. Anyway, I learned a lot of they had a lot of different. The prints weren't the same. They had a lot of different terminologies, but all you got to do is follow the wires out, and they do the same thing. I just had to get used to them being called different things. Kurt Longquist, am I pronouncing that right? I hope so. Toughest, most strenuous part of Tapestry from Cliff to Caliente. No, not really. It's once you start climbing up out of Caliente, it's just about the same all the way there. The actual steepest section is between Marcel and Cable. It's a short section where they bypass Tunnel 13. And if you're ever up in that area, you can stand there and see the difference where it really drops off. I was told in the 80s that it was a 3.2% grade. Just that piece right there. It's probably, I don't know, 1,000 feet long. But other than that, it's all about that section there is in the 2.8, 2.9, and then that little hump. But no, it's all a tough climb. Yes, I am on Wi-Fi. This room is not hardwired. We have my wife gets the hardwire because she's working from home and she works at a call center for a healthcare place. So she gets the good connection, and we've never run one into this room because if I do this more often, maybe I'll do something like that. I just yell and scream and jump up and down when I lose my connection now. No, Bruce Del Vecchio. No, I have never filmed between Sacramento and Reno. I've been to Reno a few times for conferences and stuff, training for work, and I've shot some stills down in the lower end between Reno and Truckee, but I've never been anywhere other than going along Interstate 80. I've never been in that area. I would love to. I want to take the Amtrak from Sacramento to Reno sometime while it's snowing and do a piece on that. But no, I've not been in that area yet. Thomas Richardson, Mickey Rodriguez, Quentin Allison. Welcome, you guys. Thomas Richardson, hello from Goodyear, Arizona. Still have family in Bakersfield. Yeah, if you're ever out here, if you're going to be out here, drop me a note. Let me know. We'll have lunch or something. Originally from Porterville. I was talking about the East Side branch. Goes right through Porterville. And there are still some branch lines that go through Porterville, or to Porterville anyway. Nah, maybe there aren't. I have to go look. Because at one time there was a bunch. The Visalia Electric, all that stuff. There was a whole bunch of it up there. I don't know what's all there anymore. I know in the 80s, I worked on putting in a couple of big crossings up there at Henderson and one of the other, Olive, I think. We put some big crossings in. They're all gone now. Hey, Marlon, what's up, buddy? Yeah, I saw that they finished or heard they finished the second trestle. I wasn't able to get up there and film it that night because of the weather. It was too muddy and it was raining, and I wasn't going to stand out in it. I didn't want to get stuck, but I did some stuff on it. I'll post that. Let's see. And Jim W., hey, you're welcome for me being your eyes and ears on the Tatchby. It's an honor to do it for all of you. Tom Joseph, I suppose you're talking about Don Ehler. He will retire in about 2.5 years. He's off on disability right now. He had rotator cuff surgery on his right arm. And he's still pissed off that I got to retire and he didn't. John Crum, from Grand Junction. Hope you saw the little piece I did at Grand Junction. Spent one night there on my recent road trip. Ran into a subscriber. John, are you the subscriber I ran into? Ken Strange. Ken, how you doing? Good to see you on here. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I remember meeting you now. You know, I know my history. I always tell people if I don't know it, I can sound like I do. Studio driver. I haven't done a map with all the tunnels. I did the history of the tunnels between Caliente and Tehachapi, and showed all of them and shot video at all of them, all the ones that are still there, and shot video at places where there used to be tunnels. And I did all the numbers, and but there is a map showing those tunnels, but it would be hard to share it. And I could go on is it MapQuest, where you can pin where everything is, but it would be I'm not really good at that, but anyway. Smart Trip guy, I will definitely be back in Colorado every once in a while visiting my daughter. It's unlikely she'll ever leave there again. She loves it there. She has a good job. So, yeah. Roger Pinsky, hey, how's it going? Full B, let me know when you're going to be in town. We'll go grab a meal. I love eating. Apache Junction. Jim Fairchild, where's Apache Junction? What state's that in? Kansas Gun Nuts, how's it going? Welcome. James Cotter, I saw this question, so I'm trying to keep up with all this. Did the railroad give me much grief while I was filming my channel while I was working? Yes, they did. I'm not going to say they gave me grief. I wasn't being paid to shoot videos, and that's why I had the forbidden video files videos later on. I shot most of those while I was still working before they started telling me not to do it anymore. And I still shot a few videos when I had some spare time while I was still working, but I just didn't post them until after I retired. And but I didn't have a problem with them not wanting me to do that. And like I said, it's not what I was getting paid to do, even though there were times I sat there for hours, literally. at the Mojave Interlocking, there were times I sat there for 5-6 hours waiting for tracking time, doing nothing. They didn't seem to care about that. Yeah, I have some great maps, Matthew, of the Tehachapi. I have, you can see all the books I have, and that's just one bookcase. Um, I have plenty of maps, and I actually have one of the paper maps, the one it's about, I don't know, 8 feet long, 2 feet wide, that shows everything from Bena to Summit, and it has all the tunnels. It's from 1967, and it has all the tunnels that existed at that time. Any difference in pay between BNSF and UP? Not that I'm aware of. We're all, as far as the signal guys and the trainmen, and I'm sure the maintenance away guys, we're all represented by the same unions. They have different deals. The pay scales are probably the same, but they have different. They do have different things they're allowed to do concerning contractors and things like that. I know that a couple of railroads allowed contractors to come in and install signal locations, but not put them to work. UP never did that, neither did SP. Have I ever spoken to a scout troop? I didn't even know there was a railroading merit badge, to be honest with you. I was in the Cub Scouts when I was like 7 or 8 years old, and Webelos, but I never made it to Cub Scouts. And no one's ever approached me about it either. If they were to do so, and I was able to help, I certainly would. Fool, do I know Vince C? No, Jewetta and Brimhall's out in the same area I live in, but I don't know anybody named Vince, I don't think. Kansas gun nuts. Well, I'm glad you got retired. I always hate to hear that people have to retire for medical issues, but as long as you're enjoying your retirement, I guess it doesn't matter why you had to retire. Rick Vaya, thank you for the compliment. And that goes for everyone. I get so many compliments in the comments, and don't think for a second that I don't appreciate them. I love getting the comments, and even the ones where people are, I'm not going to say they're criticizing me, but maybe some constructive criticism. I don't mind that at all. I just enjoy the comments. Like somebody said one time, it's better to be talked about badly than not talked about at all. Gary Radford from Arizona, welcome. Kurt Longquist, the coastline doesn't get used much at all, except in the event of emergencies, and they're still limited to the types of trains they can run on that. There's still a lot of lightweight rail over there, but they don't use the coast unless there's a major emergency. There would have to be a derailment that shut things down for a couple of weeks. If it's just going to be a few days, they'll just wait and get the pass going again. They don't have crews headquartered over there or anything. They could put that into effect quickly if they needed to, but if it's just going to be a few days, they don't worry about it. It's a shame too, because that's a really cool place to be. I've traveled up and down that a bit and would love to shoot some videos over there, but the only thing they run are Amtraks. Ricky Yamaga, welcome. Yeah, they did a really good job of extending, doing the double track project from Waylong to Marcel. Really helped things out, helped speed things up. They've been talking about double tracking the entire mountain since I went to work there. But as far as doing it through where the tunnels are, that's the reason that it's not all double tracked, because that would be a huge undertaking, and I don't know. And obviously, if it would speed things up and make things profitable instantly, they would have done it already. But it must not be something that's going to pay for itself for a long time. So I'm sure that's why they're holding off. And they would have to shut the railroad down in segments because there's no way they could daylight tunnels or do any of that while they're trying to run trains. Smart Trip guy. Yeah, they still have searchlights. There's still a lot of searchlights around. We just don't have them around here anymore. We have a couple of entering signals that come off branch lines, like up at Famosa and up in Fresno, where they're still using, those aren't tied into the microprocessor PTC systems, and so they still use searchlights for that. Oh, the Vince guy, fool me, he has railroad signals in his backyard. Yeah, I haven't, I don't drive, I don't go over there much. Don't know anybody who lives in that area. So I have never noticed that. If I were to see him, I'd probably stop and ask him to give me a tour. I love signals. And I'm planning also, just to let everybody know, at some point, now that the weather's starting to get nice, go to the Tehachapi Depot, and I'm going to have one of the guys operate all the signals there while I have the control compartments of whatever piece of equipment we're doing, and show you how the control compartment works, show you what goes on inside it. I think that'll be pretty interesting. Thank you, Kirk. Thank you. I when I started this channel, I knew I didn't want it to just be another channel of watching trains go by. There are plenty of those. For those of you who've never seen this guy named Spencer Hughes, he must have really awesome equipment. He does jets too, and that's why I watch his channel. I love his military jet stuff because I absolutely love jets. But he does some railroad stuff. It's some really cool stuff. When the big boy came through, Spencer Hughes, go check out that channel. It's got some pretty cool stuff, but it's just stuff going by, no narration. I wanted to make mine a little different and share my knowledge, my experience, and tell stories. And you can thank my wife for the stories I tell, because I was telling her a story one day. We were driving down the road by somewhere where I did something. I remember. She goes, that's the stuff you need to put in your videos. I said, nobody wants to hear that. She said, sure they do. It's funny. It's interesting. You should do that. So I started doing it, and everybody seems to like it. So thanks, babe. It's funny, Ricky Yamaga, I don't watch the live cams very often. I don't have time to do it. And, but I know the family that run those, the Butters, very nice people. And I don't know that they operate them, but they're the ones that got them all set up. Very nice people, very cool people, and put them in some really cool spots. I can't say much about how cool Jamara is, because it's just a flat line out by Bakersfield, but you still see the same action. Railroading mirror badge and scouts interview someone in the road. Brian Simpson. I've never heard of that. I never heard of that at all. I'd be more than happy to help somebody out. Maybe sometime somebody will see my channel and get in touch with me. I think that would actually be pretty cool. Apache Junction, Arizona. I'm not real familiar with all of Arizona, other than the places that I traveled. And when I went up through Payson and Snowflake on my trip, I'd never been that way before. And I don't know if Apache Junction is in that way, or if that's down by, I think that's down by Phoenix, isn't it? Sorry if it isn't, but I really enjoy Arizona. I really like traveling through there. Get a lot of beautiful, beautiful country. I know a lot of people think of Arizona and they just think desert, but Arizona is almost as diverse geographically and geologically as California. It's really cool. Mark Bushnell, yes, the Starlight runs up the coast. It's funny they call it the coastline, but some of it runs along the coast, but most of it doesn't. Most of it goes inland up around San Luis Obispo and stays inland until it gets, I don't know. I'm not familiar with the coastline in Northern California or Oregon, but along California, most of it is not along the coast. Far West Phoenix. Oh, on the west side of Phoenix. Yeah, I didn't get over there much except to go to that race. I was staying right. I can't even remember I was staying right along the 17 in a great big nice hotel there. I got that hotel because my wife was supposed to go with me, and I wanted to get something more than just a Motel 6 like my cheap butt usually does. And then she ended up not going, and I could have canceled those reservations and got something a lot cheaper. The project, Matthew, the project from Waylon to Marcel, I think they spent about 2 years from the time they started it till the time they put it in service. I wasn't working up there at the time. I would go up every once in a while and check it out, see what they were doing. I watched some of the excavation of the tunnel, or of the cut they made around Tunnel 10. And I wish I'd have had my channel in, or I wish I'd have just thought to shot a video of it for Facebook. But oh well. Flashing red, smart trip guy, flashing red. Yeah, the flashing reds, Southern Pacific didn't use flashing reds. We used a lunar for moving into occupied track, and UP uses flashing reds for that and for other signals. It just depends on where it is. So G Skid 2000. What's your worst injury riding a motorcycle on dirt? I've never been injured on the street. I've never wrecked I rear-ended an SUV just barely on Interstate 5 one night. I almost got stopped. I didn't even stall the engine. And just barely. My wife said, "What did we hit him?" But it's crushed my front fender in a little bit. That's the only time I've ever had an incident on the street. I've broken both my femurs. I broke one in 1975 racing a Grand Prix race up by Tehachapi, the Great Escape Grand Prix. And then I broke my other one in 2000 out at LACR at the old track in Palmdale. So those are my two worst injuries on dirt bikes. And I hope I never get hurt again. I'm going to take it real easy on the big KTM. Bealville and Caliente are my favorite two places to rail fan around Tehachapi. Really, that's a cool. I think that everywhere that the public has access to up there are all pretty cool places. But I'm so fond of Woodford because you can go to 3 or 4 different places at Woodford, and if you didn't tell anybody you were at the same sighting, they'd never know because it's such a diverse looking place. And Woodford is it's so photogenic. It's got so many, the old water tank foundations up there, and different hills and the creek and the trestles. It's a pretty cool place. Ken S., how you doing, buddy? Good to see you. Glad you could make it. Oh, Roger Penske. Yeah, it doesn't surprise me about people shooting at each other. It's these big cities. It's getting crazy. It's getting scary. It's been scary. It's just not getting any better. I wish I didn't have to wear these because the line gets right when I'm trying to see you people, but I do. Part of getting old, I guess. Excuse me. Mike Caps, how you doing? No, I never had any interest at all in being a trainman. I've ridden on the head ends of trains, and I even rode in cabooses a couple of times when they still had cabooses. But it just wasn't my cup of tea. It wasn't. I like doing things. I like being outside. I did not want to just sit on a train. I rode the head end of locomotives when I had the Vegas territory from Daggett to Vegas a couple of times, and I've never been so bored in my whole life. At least on Tehachapi, you're going slow, but you're going around curves and the scenery changes. But going from Daggett to Vegas and going up Sema Hill, it's just a long, big curve and trains going real. No, it wasn't my thing, even though those guys, they made a lot of money. And another thing, I raced bikes, I rode Harleys. I've always liked my weekends. I always appreciated my time off, and trainmen just don't get a lot of that. And when I was in Bakersfield, in my office, in the building I was in, had an anteroom that all the offices went off of, and they had a big table in there, and that's where they held their investigations. And they were constantly having investigations for guys calling off too much. And I never wanted to get involved in that. It was neat to ride on them and just experience that, but I wouldn't want to have to do it for a living. And I'm not saying that other people, man, I'm not trying to dissuade anybody from it, because it would be a cool job, I guess. It just wasn't my cup of tea. Run into a retired signal guy from Norfolk Southern. Everybody knows how much I love motocross. My wife and I were at the Glen Helen National in 2015. They don't have nationals there anymore. And we were sitting up in the grandstands and got to talking to this older couple next to us, a little bit older than us. And their grandson was Jason Anderson, who's in the title fighter. He was until he crashed. But a famous motocross racer, big time. And it turns out that Jason Anderson's grandfather was a signal maintenance foreman for Santa Fe and BNSF, and we had quite a conversation. It's always cool to run into signal folks. There's not a lot of us compared to most other jobs. Southeast Texas Sirens and Rail. Watch the Signal System series. Oh, I hope you enjoyed it. I tried to make it as simple as possible. I try not to complicate things too much when I'm talking about that stuff. James Cotter. Oh, yes, we do. Oh, yes, you do what? I got behind there. Sorry. They're actually working on putting a camera in Mojave. I heard they were going to put another one down in Mojave. It'd be neat. They do a lot of, they do the switching there, making up the Trona trains and going out on the Lone Pine. Probably be pretty busy if you like watching switching. Brian Simpson, tourist. I looked into the tourist railroads before I left on my trip, and all of them were closed for the season at that time. Next time I go back, I'm going to make sure I do it in the tourist season, and I would love to do the Georgetown Loop and Durango Silver. And I obviously can't do them all on one trip, but eventually I would love to go do all that stuff. Southeast Texas, you have your own small collection. That's cool. Awesome. I don't collect things. I have nothing. I've given so much cool stuff away. My dad has some of it because he has some large collections. So I'm thinking about when he's gone that I'll take some of that stuff and put it in my backyard or something. Cool. Amtrak stays inland to San Jose. That's a long way from San Luis Obispo to Santa Fe to San Jose. That's a long way. But still, I'd still like to do that run sometime. I've never ridden Amtrak any further than Bakersfield or Fresno. We went up and watched Raiders games in the past. Went up to Fresno, took kids to the zoo when they were little. And it was neat. I'd like to do a cross country one. It's really expensive, though. Well, Mark Bushnell, if you ever talk to any of these Boy Scout people, I see you're in Denver, so you're not in California, but I wouldn't even know how to get in touch with Boy Scouts to let them know that I'm available if they want to do something like that. But if you have some connections, let them know I'm around. Send them the link to my channel and tell them to like, share, and subscribe. Yeah, there's still a lot of searchlight signals, the older signals on lines that didn't fall under the PTC mandate. They have to run over, if they run under a certain amount of tonnage per year. And there are a few other criteria. I'm not that conversant with it. I know that not all lines had to upgrade to the LEDs we use now. And the old color light signals, we still have some of those, the incandescent color lights up the valley and out through the desert. But yeah, not all lines had to do it. Obviously, if you saw my road trip thing, they still have semaphores out in New Mexico. Brian Simpson, yes, I have been to the Laws Museum numerous times. It's a very cool museum. If any of you are ever up in the Owens Valley going to Mammoth or something and you've got a little time, the Laws, go up Highway 6 out of Bishop, and it's about 3 or 4 miles up the road. Really, really cool museum, the old Carson, Colorado narrow gauge. It's a little city. They've got all the old buildings that were there in the old days. They've got a static display of one of the narrow gauge locomotives, the number 9, and you can go up and get in the cab, and they've got some old cars, and a really cool museum. I highly recommend it. Samantha, yeah, you live in Nebraska, huh? I don't know. Maybe I'll make sure. I've been to Nebraska before, but it's a long time ago. It was in Omaha. Matthew said, I don't know what a bear table is. I'm sorry. I always tell people I know a lot about the railroad, but don't know a lot about trains. I don't know locomotives. I didn't know there were AC and DC locomotives till one of you asked me if I'd do a piece on it. I had to go talk to my manager operating practices buddy over here and have him tell me what the differences were. And went out, he took me out and showed me what one looked like opposed to the other and what the differences. Pretty interesting. I had no idea. Just Say No to Holcraft. Welcome. Wants me to talk about how I got hired and what my qualifications were. I had no qualifications. I didn't even know what a signalman was. There was an ad in the Bakersfield, California, that Southern Pacific was hiring signalmen. And I thought that maybe that was the guy that stood on the caboose and waved the lantern. I had no clue. That's what I thought it might be. But I submitted my application at the unemployment office, and they called me about 2 weeks later for an interview. And I did my interview down here at the Bakersfield Signal office, a guy named Gray Tisdale. And it was the strangest interview I've been to. Not that I did a lot of interviews. Most of the places I went to work, I just went down there and they hired me right then. But he was like, so what do you want to work for the railroad? And I was like, I need a job. And I think trains are cool, but I need a job. And it was an and a lot of and on between both of us. And I didn't think I'd ever hear from him again. And I was living in Tehachapi. I went to work for a place called Ashland Chemical, and they had a carbon black plant over there. I worked there for 45 days and they fired me. Thank God. And the railroad called me the next week. So I'd never been so happy to be fired from a job before as I was from that one. But they didn't have any qualifications from anybody at that time. They were hiring people. We were putting CTC in from Mojave to West Colton. It was train order territory at the time I went to work, and we were getting rid of that. And all they needed were a lot of people with strong backs and weak minds. And we worked our butts off for about 1.5 years, and then they laid us all off. And I was laid off for 3 years. I'd forgotten about the railroad. I was running backhoes, driving trucks, and I just happened to be unhappy with where I was working when they called me back. Doug Ackerman. What up, Mark? What up, Doug? Enjoying, whoop, God dang it. Enjoying interacting with the subscribers. I love it. So much fun. Is rolling off limits to rail fans. I always tell people that if you don't have to go through a closed gate, it's probably okay. Yes, it's private property, but if you go down to Rowan, you don't have to go through any closed gates to get there. And if somebody were to complain, because there are no railroad cops out driving up and down the railroad looking for people rail fanning and taking pictures. Stay out of the way. Don't get by the tracks. Don't get close to the tracks, because then train crews will report you. But if you're just watching trains go by, half the time they'll honk their horn and wave at you. But even if a railroad cop was to go down there, chances are they're just going to tell you that you need to leave. They're not going to certainly not going to arrest you, and they're probably not going to cite you. They'll just tell you can't be there. But Rowan's like Woodford. It's one of those places that has got a lot of curves and a lot of different looks. It's really a neat place. Wish you'd have done a thing on intermediate signals. I did a piece, my how signals work, and what makes them different from traffic signals, and it was an all-encompassing thing. It talked about control points and intermediates. If you guys want me to do a piece just on intermediate signals are just automatic signals. They convey whatever aspect the circuitry sends them, and they're designed to display. They're not controlled by the dispatcher, and that's why you can go by an intermediate and see green signals going both ways until a signal is cleared, which knocks down the opposing direction signals. Their normal position on both signals is clear. But I can certainly do a video on it. I have so many ideas that you folks have given me, and ideas that I have of my own. Literally a list that's probably got 50 things on it right now at least, and I'll get to them. Lately there's been a lot of things going on the mountain that I've been taking, trying to get for you. The bridge thing, the rail gang, the work trains, just a lot of things going on up there. And I haven't had a chance to do anything else. And then life intervened over the last week and a half. I've had virtually no time to go shoot videos. I've had to be a grown-up, and it has really, really sucked. Paul B. Signal question. I was a railroad crossing with a red flashers flickered very quickly like a photo flash. It did this for a minute. Was this a glitch? If sometimes with the LEDs, they'll do that. They'll flicker, especially if if the control part of them is starting to go out. And if it's the lights on the gates, where you have an older system where the whole crossing wasn't upgraded, where they didn't upgrade the house and the way that worked, there's a little capacitor you have to put in series with the gate lights to make them work correctly. And sometimes if that's going out, they'll flicker too. But it's a thing with LEDs. Whoops. Gosh. Yeah, I know what you were, Southeast Texas. Yeah, I know what you're talking about with the tri-lights. The ones we used out here were the other way. They had the two on Yeah, be the same. Yeah, upside down triangle, 2 on the top and a red on the bottom. Samantha, you're from Missouri. Oh, I'm a lot more likely to go to Missouri than I am Nebraska. My stepdad lives in Ava, Missouri, down by the Arkansas border. Need to get out there and see him sometime. I'll hit you up. When you were in Vegas, New Mexico, did you know the area? No, I didn't know that's where they filmed Red Dawn. And that's one of my, not to say it's one of my favorite films, but I really enjoy it. The original Red Dawn. I never saw the second one. I'm not really into reboots. But no, I didn't know that. And I'd love to go back to Las Vegas sometime and do some video in the town itself. It looked like it had some really cool old buildings. Bare tables. Oh, okay. Empty container trains. Yeah, I did. Not many people watched the video I did of me and my grandson going riding out in the desert. But one of the trains that we stopped and waited for, I had the GoPro on, was one of those trains. And it was a long train. He had a whole bunch of them. The Eddie Clock locomotive. I don't know what that is, Samantha. As I said, I don't know much about trains, just the railroad. Yeah, Mark. Yeah, when it came to being part of a flight crew, I love flying, but I wouldn't want to be a commercial pilot or a military pilot for that matter. I don't like sitting in the same place for hours and hours and hours. I don't like doing that. That's why I love being a signalman. You work here, especially in maintenance. You work here for a little while, then you move over here and you do that. And I might have 5 or 6 places in a 100-mile span of territory in one day where I had things to do. And sometimes I would drive home at night. Sometimes I'd spend the night if I was up in Fresno or out in Barstow or something. I'd just grab a room and stay out there. I really, really enjoy that aspect of the signal department. GRV Olands, welcome. A distant signal and a home signal. The home signals are the signals at control points. And the distant signal, and these are terms I really don't use anymore. And the distant signal would generally be the approach signal. And those were automatic block. Those came about during the automatic block days. And some people still use those terms, but not many. But yeah, your distant signal was generally the approach signal to a control point, or prior to what we call control points today, the end of a sighting where they would have to make one move or another. I have never been to Canada. Lucky loves trains. I have never been out of the lower 48. I've never been to Mexico, and I've never been to Canada. I've traveled extensively within the United States, but I've never had the desire to go to Mexico. And I've had the desire many times to go to Canada. I've just never, I've been up in northern Montana. I've been close, but no. I will one of these days, though. I will get up to Canada, and I would certainly love to shoot some trains. My ex-wife and I looked into doing the Trans-Canada from Vancouver to wherever it goes on the East Coast back in the 90s, and it was over $10,000. And wow, that's expensive. It would be worth it. It included a lot of stuff. It was a very, very inclusive deal. But no, I've never been. Did I have a lot of good bosses at the railroad? I never had any bad bosses, you might say. Some of them were very good bosses, treated me very well. I worked for a guy named Brian Qualls. We ended up becoming very good friends, are still in touch. He actually resigned from the railroad recently and went to work for a railroad contracting company, and he's much, much happier. Excuse me. But the guy I was working for when they cut my job, he didn't have to cut my job. He could have cut the job of the guy that had a lot less seniority, but he didn't. It's like I said, I did a piece. I don't know if you saw it. It was one of my early videos, how I felt about all my bosses on the railroad. I did it right after I retired. And we didn't actively dislike each other. I know I didn't actively dislike him. We didn't agree where a lot of things were concerned. And he didn't like the fact that I was a better signalman than he was. And he was never going to be the signalman I was, because he went into management when he was young, and you don't have the opportunity to learn much once you get into management. And he didn't like the fact that I could think on my feet a lot more quickly than him. And I'm not going to say it was me. I don't think he liked anybody. He was hell bent on it. He fired at least 3 people while I was there. And so I don't know. But I can't say he was a bad boss. He didn't make things hard. He kind of, but no, I never really had any bad bosses. Most of my bosses were pretty good guys. And even the ones I didn't, I got along with all of them, but even the ones I didn't agree with their style or whatever, it was okay. We got along. We didn't need to go home and have dinner and sleep together. We just needed to deal with each other during the day. Can you explain ABS, MBS? What's MBS? I'm not sure what that is. Automatic block. That was just an early signal system. ABS. That was just an automatic signal system. There were no control signals in automatic block. Everything was just an automatic signal. It did what it was supposed to do based on the circuitry, the design of the circuitry, and it could vary from place to place, from location to location, as to what that signal was designed to do, but it was all completely automatic. Rail order, so I think maybe you're talking about train order. That was used before the advent of modern signaling, and even in automatic block, they still used train orders. Today, if a train or if a dispatcher, if there's some work going on, or if there's a train stopped out at location X and they don't want a train to go out there, they bring them up to a control point and keep the signal at stop until that problem is cleared up or the gang is gone or whatever. And then they can clear a signal through there. With train orders, when they use that, they didn't have that ability to do that. So the station up the road that knew, if a gang was working or a train was up there, he would telegraph back or call back in the later days to the station, the next station down, and say, this is what's going on out there's a train, yada yada. He would type up a train order and give it to the next train that went by, and they would read the order, and it would tell them, you have to stop at milepost, short of milepost such and such, or you have to slow down to 10 miles an hour. But that just did what the signals do now. So that was, and then CTC, centralized traffic control, is a manual system. It is controlled remotely by a dispatcher. They can clear signals, line routes at interlockings or at control points. And that is how they keep trains running. They arrange the meets. They have to be good at their job. I would not want to be a dispatcher. They're the air controllers of the railroad. They have to do things the same way. They have to figure out when a train's going to get to a certain siding or a certain piece of double track, and figure out when the train coming the other way is going to be there, so they can make a meet without stopping either train if possible, and or for the least amount of time possible. They have to prioritize trains and make sure that the trains that they don't want to stop don't have to stop. And if there's an issue out there with a train, they have to compensate. If a train stalls or breaks down or something, they have to compensate for that. Try to get trains stacked up in a fashion that when things open up, they can start fleeting trains, which is what they'll generally do in one direction. So they'll have all the trains in the other direction in sidings or places where they won't be in the way. Very complicated job. I wouldn't want it. Smart trip. Have you seen signal bungalow lights flashing? If a bungalow light is flashing at a crossing, that means that, well, if they're flashing anywhere, it means the power is off. The AC power is off. They used to have what were called maintainer call lights that would come on, but they didn't flash. But other railroads may still use those, but Southern Pacific quit using them in the 80s when they got good, reliable radios. They stopped using those. But generally, if that light's flashing, that means the AC power is off. D. Mark Rouse, how you doing? Do the lead engines control the other power? Yes. Even if the point unit has shut down for some reason. I just did a video where the first two units weren't running, but they were operating the train from the lead unit. So yes, the lead unit does control the rest of the train. It also controls the help. That's where they control the helpers or the distributed power units from. Well, God dang it. Dwarfs being called low home signals. What is the home technology? The home term. I actually don't know where the term home came from. I don't know if that was originally signals that went into yards. I really don't know. I've never looked into it. No one's ever explained it to me. But everyone's Greg. Okay, I will call you Greg. You can call me Mark. Oh, God, I cracked myself up. Yeah, I don't know where the terminologies came from. When I was a gang foreman and they'd hire out new guys on the gang, they would start asking me about the terminologies and what the different relays all had different names, and that some of them were, RHGPR, and they would ask me what all this stuff meant, and a lot of times I didn't know. And I told them it doesn't make any difference. When you read the prints, battery starts here and it ends here, and it doesn't matter what it goes to. It doesn't matter what it's called. Just don't worry about what things mean. Just worry about how they work and what they're supposed to do. CSX 6900, welcome. So it was a different roadway protection. Thank you. It was one of my early videos. That's one I made when I was still working. The one on, he's talking about the video I did about how roadway workers protect themselves, and very important. That is something that we got tested on annually, and anytime that upgrades or changes, whatever, were made to those rules, it required a training course right then, and they were very, very serious about on-track worker protection. For those of you who don't know, in 1994, in September 1994, I was a gang foreman. We were working out by Palmdale, between Palmdale and Wash, at a place, it's called Vulcan now. Back then it was called State Sand. And we were just inspecting a location for a future project. And I was looking in the case. I did not post a lookout. I didn't think about it because we weren't out working. But the maintainer was out there doing some stuff with an electric lock, and a couple of my guys were standing there watching him, and they were standing between the rails, and they were struck by a high rail vehicle. The driver was on cruise control and doing paperwork. He was not looking where they were going, and my guys never saw him coming. And they were both very badly injured, permanently disabled, both of them. And that accident was one of the catalysts for Section 136 in the Book of Rules, which was an entire new chapter on on-track protection, roadway worker safety. That accident changed everything, and it sucks that I was part of it, that I was involved in not doing the things I should have been doing, and that my men were badly injured, and the guy that was driving the high rail vehicle never got over it. But it's very important. It's very important. Probably the most important part of our job. Well, the most important part of our job was always safety, but how we went about providing that even to ourselves when we were by ourselves is priceless. It can't be replaced. G-skid, how reliable or troublesome were moving parts of a searchlight signal? They weren't troublesome at all. It had the little armature inside that had the red, yellow, and green roundels. They were pretty bulletproof. Well, they weren't bulletproof. People shot them all, every once in a while, and they didn't survive. But they were really reliable. You had to, we call it sliding. Every 4 years, you had to go up and test them. You have a voltage, and you feel that applied voltage. All relays had to be tested. I'm sorry, the armature, armatures for the signals had to be tested every 2 years. All relays had to be tested every 4 years. But it would just, you do that and it would rock it and you'd record the voltages that it worked at. But no, they were bulletproof. They were really, really solid systems. And no, you never lubricated for the searchlight signal. No, you didn't use, those were sealed units. You didn't use any lubrication or anything on them. Was a relay at the bottom that had the glass piece with all the contacts in it that moved everything. And then the signals went through, and that's where your repeaters went to the house and told you whether the signal was clear or it stopped. And then on top of that, it was a sealed unit with the armature inside it. So you couldn't, if something was wrong with one of them, if you had a cracked roundel or you just had to change the whole unit out. It all slid in had a post on top of it that slid into a hole, and then you bolted the sides down, and you would just pull the whole thing out and change them. They were very expensive. I was going to try and get in the signal department. KCF, they didn't take me. Yeah, keep trying. Southeast Texas. Yeah, if you want to get on. Maybe it's not that they just didn't take you, but maybe they just didn't take a bunch of people at the same time. But the signal department's a really cool job. I thought it was, in my opinion, and I still feel that way. And I always did. The signal department is the most important department on the railroad because nothing happens safely without us. Your kids don't go through the crossings on their buses. Your mom doesn't drive a car across crossings safely without our work. Trains don't operate safely. They don't operate efficiently. And it's all up to us to keep that working. And so I still think that we're the most important. You can put guys on the locomotives and you can put rails out there, but unless it has a good, efficient signal system, then they're not going to move very quickly or efficiently. By golly. Cherokee Kid. Yeah, he says the track switching at KCS yard in Meridian, Mississippi is still done by hand. A lot of yards are like that. Most yards that aren't classification yards are like that. They're still switched by hand. They have a switchman out there. Bakersfield's that way. Fresno's that way. There's no. They have a couple, like up at Fresno. They have a couple of automatic switches that can be done, but you still have to go up to the switch and push a button. It's not the yard master doesn't have anything to do with it. So there are a lot of the smaller yards that are still switched by hand. James Cotter, dark territory is railroad that is not signaled. And those dark territories have specified you can't run. I think it's more than 45, either 40 or 45 miles an hour in dark territory. The Lone Pine Branch is a good example of dark territory. You have a lot of short branches that are dark, but they're short and they don't go very far. But the Lone Pine Branch is 40 miles long, but I think it's 45 miles an hour. You know what? Let's find out. And the Lone Pine Branch is its own subdivision. It's called the Lone Pine Subdivision. And 40 miles an hour is the maximum authorized speed on the Lone Pine Branch, except between milepost 431.7 and 427.8, it's 10 miles an hour. And from 427.8 to 422.0, it's 20 miles per hour. And in a timetable, since we don't run trains on schedules anymore, they don't have that, but timetables have all the information about specific pieces of railroad. This is broken into divisions. This is the Los Angeles area, this particular one. And it has maps. It has all the information pertaining to a particular piece of the railroad. Okay. Once in a while, there are YouTube videos of detached locomotives idling with no one around. They don't generally leave locomotives idling anymore if they're going to be there for more than an hour or so, or I don't know what the time limit is, but they don't generally leave them running anymore. And so if there's one sitting somewhere idling, it's probably part of a work train consist, or maybe they're getting ready to make a power mover. They hook a bunch of locomotives up and move them. Who knows? But I can't say that there's a particular reason that they would be one idling. It's just not being used right then. And it was a common practice in the, they probably started shutting them off probably 15 or 20 years ago. But prior to that, it was common practice to they'd sit there and leave them idling for days. And that was just the way things were. But fuel's more expensive now. And you have people, they want people breaking into a locomotive that's running and taking off in it, because that did happen. Is trying to be humorous. That happened. I'm not saying it happened often or regularly, but it did happen occasionally. Did the TV show MASH film in the area of your videos? No, MASH was filmed down by I can't remember the name, in the area south of here, southwest, over towards Ventura somewhere. If you ever drive in that area, you can see those mountains. They all look like that, all the way from where Magic Mountain is, all the way back to out towards Oxnard, out that way. There was a studio right there by Magic Mountains. We used to race at a motocross at a place called Indian Dunes. And when you went into Indian Dunes, you turned left to go to the track, and you turned right to go to that studio lot where they would film things out there. But no, I live about 100 miles, 80, 90 miles north of that area. Mark Bushnell, other than roadway worker protection, what kind of recurrent training is there on a railroad, and how often? We have constant training. We have safety things. We are tested annually on the book of rules, flagging, which is how Form Bs work, things that we don't even, as a signalman, things I was never involved in. High rail operation, I never operated a high rail in my whole career. I never wanted one. I never got one, but I still had to be trained in all the rules surrounding it. And every time if they changed anything in the signal department, the way, say, hotbox detectors or whatever, if they change the way they work, they always offered training. Not everybody took advantage of it, but I did. You weren't forced to go do anything other than your first 4 signal phases. You had to go do that. And if you didn't pass one of those phases, your first initial 4 phases, then you were fired. But the other training, whenever they would do any changes in the signal department, they offered training, and I always took advantage of it. And I got to travel a lot. I always tell people I've never flown on my own dime, and I've been all over Houston and that area, and Chicago and Salt Lake City, and Phoenix, and it was a constant training that we could always do. And I always took advantage of it. I always say that that's one thing that I can say about the railroad is that they didn't mind spending money training you. And I always advised all of the younger guys that were coming up, take advantage of all the training you can get. And but as far as annually, every year it used to all be stand up where they had an instructor and all that. Most of it is done online now, but there are still some. I think they started making us do the book of rules again with a stand up instructor. But yeah, a lot of testing, a lot of things that we have to stay on top of. Calabasas. That's where MASH was filmed. I knew it was out there somewhere. Greg, I have 2 GRS SAs. To make the bulbs last longer, the only thing I could say is put a resistor in there and drop the voltage down to about 10 volts. You'll get the same light. It'll be you won't be able to tell it any difference really from the 12 volt to the 10 volt, and it should last longer. We never used GRS signals. Almost all the searchlight type signals we used were US and S. We did have some safe trans stuff, incandescent stuff, but those were generally the color lights. But yeah, drop your voltage a little bit and see if that helps. Moman, greetings. Have I heard of ML Wicks? I have not. Beneficiary of SPR of Southern Pacific. Nope, never heard of him. Hey, James, what's going on, buddy? James Graham, buddy of mine, just moved to Tennessee, and his lovely wife, Mandy, friends of ours. Glad you could join us. How you liking Tennessee? Samantha, no, I get these timetables. I'm still buddies with the manager of operating practice and the guys. I go down there and whenever they put out a new timetable, which isn't very often. This one is from Roseville's from 2017 and LA's from 2019. So I guess the Roseville one I probably did already have. But now I go down there and get them. As a matter of fact, I had 2 LA timetables, the Los Angeles area ones with the Mojave sub on it. But I let one of my rail fan friends taught me how to one of them. Yeah, it's nice to have been. I was pretty well liked at the railroad. I had no enemies that I was aware of. Got along with pretty much everyone, and the guy who was the manager of operating practices in Bakersfield, been friends for a long time. He's a really, really good guy, and doesn't mind helping me out. And when I retired, he said, "Hey, man, don't be a stranger. You're still family, so come on by." And so that's what I don't know if you saw the video I did when they had the open house. He called me up, said for the new office, and said, "Hey, come down to the open house and check it out. Have hot dogs and Cokes and whatever." So I still go down there and see him every once in a while. And if I need something like a timetable, he doesn't mind helping me out. And there's nothing in a timetable that's top secret. It's just instructions for trains. It's not like you can go in there and use any information in one of these to do something crazy to the railroad. All you need to do, that's a sledgehammer or a gun, and you can really mess things up. You certainly don't need a timetable or one of my videos to show you how to do that. Oh, Jim Fairchild, is island circuitry still used at grade crossings? It is in some places. Usually it's not allowed on the main line at all anywhere, but off of back tracks and spurs, We have one right up here by a place called Lerdo, just north of town on the Lerdo Spur there. That's an island only. We have a couple around Bakersfield on back tracks that the SJVR uses and coming out of the 50 lead of the Bakersfield yard. And yeah, so we do still have those, but not for, obviously island circuits. For all you who don't know, didn't see in my video about crossings, an island circuit is where a train has to come up and stop. And then east forward, it's only got a crossing circuit in the island, which extends to anywhere between 20 and 50 feet from the edge of the pavement. And they have to come up, and there's a stop sign, and they stop. Then they proceed slowly into the island circuit, and then they can't proceed through the crossing until the gates are all the way down. And we do still use those, just not on the main line. Smart Trip guy, if you're talking about the electronic gongs, that's almost all we have in my territory. There are still a few places where we had the old point style gongs, the mechanical gongs, but and those are good gongs. After a while, they would get wore out, and you'd have to replace the internal. It's a little set of points, and they just open and close, and that's what would make the gong work. And that little set of points would get worn out, but little contacts. But pretty much everywhere, if a gong went bad, because we started putting the electronic gongs in around 1990, I think, sometime around there, and maybe the mid 90s. I can't remember now, but it was a long time ago. But after that, if a gong went bad, they wanted us to replace it with an electronic gong. So that's probably 98% of the gongs in my territory, in my corner of the world, were electronic. Moman, no, I don't know about ML Wicks. I don't know who that is. I've read a lot of stuff about Southern Pacific. The name doesn't jump out at me, but my memory's not all that good. And Smart Guy, the brand that we use of the electronic bells are mostly SafeTran, or whoever the company that bought SafeTran. In all these acquisitions that went on the last 10 years, I was at the railroad. We had Inva Systems, and I can't remember. There were so many of them, and very few of them were American. They were almost all foreign places that bought the American railroad stuff. What? Hang on here. My computer was unplugged and I didn't even know it. There. Maybe that'll help my sketchiness. Won't help my sketchiness. I'm still sketchy. But it might help my computer sketchiness. Okay, what was I saying? Oh, the worst way to stop what happens when a busy crossing is down. I'm not sure what you mean, Smart Trip. I'm not sure what you're talking about, whether you're talking about trains or traffic. When a busy crossing is down. I don't know. I'm not sure what you mean. I'm sorry. Whoops. James Cotter, have to go to work now. That stinks. I wish you didn't have to go to work, but we all got to do it. Well, I don't have to because I'm retired, but this is very nice. Wish I got to run. Thank you for showing up. Thanks for the questions and interaction. And thank you for watching the channel. And thank you for commenting, liking, sharing, subscribing, whatever you do. Thank you for it. I really appreciate it. Be safe at work and hope you enjoy the rest of your day. When I was in Chicago, which yard? I was not at a yard. we were in West Chicago, where Union Pacific has a dedicated training facility, and it's really not by any Union Pacific tracks at all, really. And we actually went in. I'm not sure which yard we went to. One of the times I was back there 4 different times, and we went into a yard one of the times as just a little side trip in one of the shuttle vans and looked around, but I don't recall which yard it was. It would have been, I can't even say it would have been on the west side of Chicago. It was a really big town. I know we got free passes for the Metro, and we got to run around on that. I got to ride in the cab of one of the Metros from West Chicago into town. That was pretty cool. New Zealand, awesome. NZR 1543, welcome. All right, got a Kiwi on here. I love it. I love hearing from the folks from abroad. That's so cool. Do the railroad make a lot of profit? Yes, they do. I remember when when Union Pacific bought Southern Pacific was $4 billion in debt, and Union Pacific acquired all of that debt. And it caused their stock prices to stall for about 10 years. But they paid that debt. They paid that debt off, I believe, in about 5 years. And it kind of slowed their profit margin down a little bit. But by the time the mandate came out for the PTC to be installed on Class 1 railroads, that cost the railroad all the railroads a lot of money. And that was one of the reasons I went to Chicago one time, was for training on the new signal systems that we were going to be using, called Microlock and Micrologic. Micrologic? No, it was Electrologic. Microcode. Not Microcode. That was an older one. Anyway, it was part of the Microlock systems. And I asked the trainer, who was he was a UP guy from the day one, and he said, no, this is no big deal. One thing Union Pacific knows how to do is make money, and their stock proves it. Their dividends are very good. They're making a lot of money. Even in recessions, railroads tend to do okay because they have to be used. They're making profit. They certainly wouldn't keep doing this to break even. I guarantee you, they would not go through all these hassles they have to go through. Southeast, he was pacing the Amtrak 161 on the Sunset Limited. Awesome. Oh. No, man. ML Wicks, I don't know anything about him. Never heard the name that I'm aware of. Public Law 95568, Tehachapi. I don't know. I'll look into it. Sounds interesting. I always like looking at cool stuff, figuring it out. Smart Trip. Yeah, BNSF is replacing crossing with newer bells. BNSF, one of the things they didn't do, especially I know for sure here in California, is when the government offered them a bunch of money to upgrade crossings, they didn't do it. They didn't take the money. And Union Pacific did. And it created a lot of work. Gangs had to come in. They upgraded crossings, put in new flashers. Railroads spent a ton of money, and the government subsidized some of it. BNSF chose not to do that. Here in Bakersfield, our crossings, most of them still have 8-inch glass flashers on their crossings and old mechanical bells. I haven't noticed them upgrading any of them just yet, but sounds like they're doing that. I guess they didn't want to be beholden to the government. I don't blame them. Refrigerator Sam, welcome. Where'd you go? I was just talking earlier. Someone asked me if I'd ever been up on Donner, and I would love to do a video, at least one video of the Donner Pass and Feather River. I've never even been to Feather River Canyon, but I've read a lot about it and seen a lot of videos from there, and I would love to go up there and shoot videos. Just a matter of time and now money. Gas is kind of slowing everything down a little bit. there's Cullen Hayes really anymore. GSR. I still get every month. I still get a little notebook, a monthly notebook minder thing. Hold on. It says I lost my connection. Nope. I guess it's working again. Is it working? Can you still hear me? Okay. But yeah, National Electric Gate, we didn't use a lot of their stuff. The only thing I say we, in my corner of the world, the only thing we ever got from National Electric Gate, at one time we had a crossing that had a 52-foot gate on it. And Western Cullen Hayes, who we got most of our gates from, didn't make anything that big. And when I called them and asked them about it, they said, no, we don't make a gate that big. And I said, well, we've got this crossing. We've been getting these gates from National Electric. And they said, if that mechanism breaks, even if it's brand new and you weren't using one of our gates, we won't replace it. So take your best shot. But we had to use what we had. They finally overpassed that crossing, 7th Standard Road, or Merle Haggard Boulevard, as it's called now. They finally overpassed that in the 2000s and got rid of that super, super long, dangerous gate. Sam Allen, welcome. Thanking me for the grinder train video. That was a lot of fun. That was the first time Jennifer had gone with me to shoot that kind of a video. She's gone with me doing some stuff on the east side and a couple of other things, but nothing like that before. And it was her idea to put me in the back of the truck while she drove along the tracks. But she wasn't used to driving on right-of-way roads, and she was afraid she was going to go off a cliff or something a couple of times. It was funny. That was a fun video to shoot. It really turned out well. I was really probably the most pleased of all the videos I've made of how it turned out, because I wasn't sure how it was going to turn out because it was nighttime, but boy, it did turn out well. I'm glad you enjoyed it. I'm glad everybody else enjoyed it as well. NZR 1543. No, not all signals are LEDs. We talked about that a little bit while ago. Most of the signals where they have upgraded the signal system after the installation of PTC, excuse me. PTC, by the way, isn't a signal system. It's a communication system. It's radios that are tied into the signal system tell the PTC system if a signal is red, and then there's a radio part of the PTC system on the locomotive. And if the locomotive goes by the red signal, the radios talk to each other, and that's how that works. The signal system is just tied into it. But when we did those upgrades from the old relay logic signals, which weren't compatible with the entire PTC system, when we upgraded those, almost all of the signals became LED signals. But we have some incandescent color lights in certain places that were compatible with it, and those some of those are still there. It's used for and the condition of the batteries. We have really good batteries now. They are GRS batteries in my corner of the world, sealed gel batteries, and we have them up to 675 amp hours, and those are generally used at crossings, sometimes at control points, but generally at crossings they have the higher capacity batteries that will last longer in the event of a power out. But crossings use the most energy when the gates going up and down. That takes a lot of energy, and flashing all the lights and making everything work at a crossing. They usually have two sets of batteries at a crossing, one that actually runs the crossing equipment and one that runs the rest of the house, the stuff in the signal cabin, the control units and things like that. And those are generally smaller batteries, 375s, I think. And gosh, it's hard to remember all this stuff, and it ain't been that long. But it's hard to say how long they'll last. Same thing at a control point. If you're at a busy place where the dispatcher's throwing the switch a lot, it takes more energy. Generally, if there's a power off that involving control points, the dispatchers are not going to say they're instructed, but they try not to use that switch if they don't have to, so they don't drain the power. Let's see. Okay, Southeast is that new signal stuff that replaced the old PMTC in your system. He helps all. They got rid of the PMTC when we installed Electrocode. And hang on, my connection's unstable again. I go through this all the time when I'm trying to get things done on the internet back here. And I don't know, maybe I'd call AT&T and complain about it for all the good it would do. Can you guys hear me right now? Okay. All right. Let me get back up here a little bit where I was. Let's see. Why is it that only 15 reefer cars are the max allowed? You know what? I don't know. That's another thing I'm not very conversant with is train makeup. I know that there are definite formulas that they use to make up trains. Some of them, this is called special system instructions, and this book has a ton of information, and I know that some of it is like this right here. This is the section that tells you what is and what isn't allowed within train makeup, and it gives you the braking power per axle formulas and all that. I don't understand it. It was never part of my job, but so I don't know. I can't answer that question. Sorry. UP is the only railroad with an active steam program. Brian Simpson, have I been to the Wyoming facility? Yes, I have. I've been there twice. Right after the merger, my ex-wife and I traveled back to Tennessee, and we were coming home, and I stopped in Cheyenne to get gas and saw a signal maintainer, started shooting the breeze with him, and he said, "Hey, have you ever been to the steam shop?" And I was like, I didn't even know they had a steam shop. It was right after the merger. I knew nothing about UP. So we went over there, and the gal who was in charge of it, she was the manager of the steam shop there, was the only person there. And she said, "I'm kind of busy, but, I showed her my ID and everything. And she said, "But if you want to go out there and look around, go ahead. Just be careful. It's really dirty out there." So I got to go out and climb all over the 3985 and the 844. The 844 was disassembled. They had the front door open and the flues were pulled out of it. Excuse me. But I have pictures of both of us in the cab at the controls of the 3985. And she was right. It was filthy. We got done. I was wearing a pair of white shorts and a white T-shirt, and I was filthy when we got done. But it was worth it. It was really, really cool. We stopped by there in 2000 or 2002. We went back that way a couple of times. But anyway, said, "Hey, let's go see if we can do that again." And we went there, and the guy, his name was Steve Lee. He was the senior engineer in all the steam locomotives. And I had just seen him on some special on Discovery Channel or something. And I went up and I said, "Hey, we want to see the locomotive." And he said, "Well, if you come back, we're going to bring it out and fire it up, start the fire. And so if you come back in a couple hours, you can watch us steam out of here." So we went and did some laundry, came back a couple hours later, and they fired it up and pulled it out. And I've got a picture of it sitting out, getting ready to go on the main line with a new locomotive sitting next to it. It was really cool. And the crazy thing was, we drove about 5 miles outside of town to watch it go by. They were going to run it out to Laramie or something for some test run. And there was nobody in California. That would have been nuts. People would have been crashing into each other and climbing over each other to get pictures and driving along the road, driving in the wrong lane. There's nobody. I got a picture of it going by, and the only thing is we had an Aerostar at the time. Our van and a couple of railroad trucks were the only vehicles sitting there. It was really cool. But yeah, I have been there. Matt Jake, I was on vacation driving through Yuma, Arizona, and I stopped and spoke to a signal tech, and he said they had Microlock 3000. Excuse me. Yeah, Microlock we used a system called Electrologic, and Electrocode 5 was the newer system that went with that. And then we had other places where we used the Microlock. Both very reliable systems. I enjoyed working with them. I always enjoyed the progress that Signal Department made. And a lot of guys didn't. They liked the old relay logic and they didn't want to learn any new stuff, but I wasn't like that. The Microlock was a good system. And yeah, they had to be all of that stuff, all that microprocessor equipment needs to be kept cool. All the houses, the cabins they put in the new system were all air conditioned. We would put some of that the newer equipment in those old SP houses, and when we get up here in the valley, it gets 110 isn't uncommon, and it's much hotter in those houses, and that stuff would fail, and we'd have to go out there in the middle of the night and open the doors up and take a box fan, get the air moving through there, and try to get it cooled down enough to get it working again. So it caused a reliable system to be unreliable, but it wasn't the system's fault. It was the lack of cooling. Matt Jake, yeah, air conditioning. Yeah, they use air conditioning. As a matter of fact, they did a program in some of the houses that didn't get upgraded, where they didn't put in a new house. We had our electricians go out and install wall mount air conditioners in the old houses. Benny, welcome. I was up the Columbia River Gorge in about 99 or 2000, and we drove down from the Portland area. We drove down all the way down to where the Bridge of the Gods is. I can't remember the name of that town now. Where the locks are. I can't remember. It was really cool though. But I saw trains on both sides of the river. I thought it was pretty cool. Haven't been back since. Greg Griffin, my dad and my uncle worked for SP as a brakeman in Bakersfield. My dad was bad ordered in 1972. For all you don't know, a bad order is something that's set out. So he moved back to Texas. Yeah, I didn't hire out till 1979, so I wouldn't have known him. Do I think BNSF and UP will merge someday? Probably not. They would have to get really creative, allowing Eastern railroads in the Western United States. They'd have to make a lot of concessions to, say, CN or CP or Norfolk. So they'd have to make a lot of concessions to avoid the Sherman antitrust stuff. So probably not. You never know, though. I never thought that they would allow them, after they denied the SP and the Santa Fe merger, after they'd even painted locomotives with all that stuff, the Kodachromes. Once they denied that, I didn't think any big companies were going to be able to merge again, but UP made it happen. So who knows? Oh, tell us about the pictures over your left shoulder. The paintings, the Star Trek. Let's see. The painting, the red and black one, my daughter Camilla, the one who lives in Denver, she painted that when she was 17, and I just thought it was awesome. I love it. And she entered it in the Kern County Fair and won her division, the junior division, and she allowed me to name it, and I named that painting Emotions in Red and Black. And then the small painting of the eclipse, she painted that too. She was older. She was, I don't know, probably in her early 20s when she painted that. I don't know, maybe, I can't remember. She moved out when she was 19 and never came back, but she still paints a lot. And then they got the Three Stooges pencil and the Kirk and Spock in pencil. Those are by an artist who did not have permission to sell those. And I don't know how rare they are, but I know I bought those in about 95 or 96, and he was ordered to stop producing them right about that time. And so I don't know, maybe I've got some collector's items there, but I'm a huge Three Stooges fan and a huge Star Trek fan. So, and then over my right shoulder, that's Led Zeppelin, my favorite rock and roll band of all time. I never considered Led Zeppelin a straightforward rock and roll band. They're very diverse, and which is why I like them. And that's them. And then Camilla, the same daughter that painted the paintings, did the graphic arts one of Jimmy Page and Robert Plant. And then above that, my younger daughter Ariel, that pastel pencil drawing of Jimi Hendrix. So there you go. Southwest Texas, we started installing electrocode about, the late 80s, I think, maybe 90. I know that I was on the Tehachapi gang. We were a 3-man gang, and it would have been about 92 or 91 maybe that we were taking out or pre-wiring the electrocode. At that time, we were still just using the old, it was all relay logic, and we were wiring around the old, you had the boxes inside the, we weren't using code systems. We were still using the code line, but it was a system we had pin units that replaced the code machine boxes that had all the little relays in them. But we were wiring, getting everything ready, pulling those wires. A huge, huge project. We worked on that for many, many months, the three of us. And we cut that in at the end. It was at the end of 1991 because we did the cutover right around Christmas that year. And we had a big problem. We couldn't get one of the intermediates to work, and it ended up lasting about 36 hours that trains had to run, flag through that whole block from Illman to Caliente, which is about 5 miles. And they called the Safe Train guys out, and they tore one of the units apart. And in the construction or the manufacturing process, when they were wiring everything, someone in the shop had dropped a terminal washer down inside the box, and it was between two of the contacts inside the terminal contacts inside the box. And they got that, dug it out of there, put it back together, and everything went to work. But I believe we started installing it in different places in the late 80s, and we continued to install it up until the modern era. That was Electrocode 4 we were putting in back then, and this is Electrocode 5 now. Smart Trip Guy, thanks for joining us. Take care, my friend. Cascade Locks. Thank you, Benny. Beautiful place. I'd like to go back there sometime. All right, Jim Fairchild, thanks for joining us. Good to see you. Greg, Del Griffin. I didn't know a lot of trainmen. I knew a lot of them by see them around town and, hey, guy from work. But I didn't know a lot of their names. I play golf now with a guy named Ron Marney, who I used to hear his name on the radio all the time. Engineer Marnie and whatever going by, and I never knew the guy. And then when I started playing golf in 2015, it's the Southern Pacific Golf Club, and I started playing golf with him, and he and my wife and then he and his wife have become very good friends, and it's just a trip that you work around someone for decades and never know them, never meet them in person. G-Skid, no, I answered the question about, let's see. Oh, maybe I did miss that one. What causes the crossing signal to stay stuck on long after a train has left? That can be a few things. The crossing controller, they're all microprocessors. Sometimes they just have issues and something goes wrong. It can be a broken rail will cause gates to stay down. A broken track wire in the approach circuit at the shunt. At either, if any of the wires become disconnected at the termination shunt or at the wires at the island, if there's any open in a circuit, the gates will go down and they will not recover. Sometimes if there's a short in the circuit, if it's far enough out, the crossing will recover, but mostly they're designed not to. If it's these crossing controllers are really smart, and they have the ability to determine whether the short is a train or something that's not making correctly. If it's on, just kind of coming on and off, it will compensate for that. And sometimes it will just cause the gates to stay down because it's not sure what's going on. But it's like if you go out there and just put a shunt down and then pick it up, it won't affect the gates with these modern crossings. They'll know that, well, that's not a train. It came and went. That's not a train. So we're going to wait till something else happens to see what we do. But yeah, there are a few things that can cause crossings to stay down. Mark Heiss, Huber, welcome. I've been doing some work explaining how railroad things work on my channel. I'm a signal design engineer these days. It'd be great to collaborate about signals sometime. Shoot me an email, motorpullet59@gmail.com. It's on the end of all my videos. Yeah, let's talk. Zeppelin fan. Awesome. What was my favorite Star Trek series? The original. There's no replacement. I was 7 when it came out, and it came on late at night, and my mom would let me stay up, and because my mom was a huge Star Trek fan too from the very beginning, and she would let me stay up and watch it with her. It was on, I remember, it seems like it was on Friday nights. It may have been different nights and stuff, but she would let me stay up and watch it with her, and that was my favorite. I liked most of them. I wasn't a big fan of Deep Space Nine. It was okay, but and I'm not a big fan of Discovery. It's okay, but I don't know. It's got too much soap opera crap in it for me. And I've never watched Picard because they want me to pay to watch it, and I don't want to pay to watch it. And sometime it'll be on somewhere where I won't have to pay for it, I guess. Maybe it already is. I haven't checked. But yeah, the original was easily my favorite. Brian Simpson, Zepp's kind of medieval. Yeah, they have a lot of that kind of stuff. The Battle of Evermore and some of that Eastern influence music in India and stuff like that. They have a lot of influence. Really cool. 208 Rail Fanning. Hey, Mark. Hey, 208, how's it going? Thanks for joining us. I'm glad you could make it. Benny, does UP have any EMD? I don't know. There again, I'm not conversation. I think, aren't the GP9s the ones with the high noses? Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. But if that's the case, I haven't seen any of those around in a long, long time. But yeah, as I said, I'm really not conversant with locomotive types. So I'm sorry. Maybe somebody else in here can tell them, because it doesn't take much to know more than I do about locomotive types. I should get more in tune with it. They have the swoosh BNSF. I guess there's only one locomotive that's painted that way that has the BNSF in gold on the front. I took a beautiful photograph of it passing the Tehachapi Depot when I was working up there one day. I thought it was a cool picture. I put on the people say, "Oh, what a catch! What a catch!" It's like, Huh? What's swoosh? Southwest or Southeast, I'm sorry, Southeast Texas. One thing I have a question about is how you guys make the gate lights work the way they do, where the one is solid and the two flash back and forth. It's a 3-wire system, and you have, what happens is that whenever the lights flash, they change polarity. And so you have one common wire that goes to all lights, and then you have another wire that breaks at the first light, and then a different wire that breaks at the second light. And the first and the second light are tied together for the pole change. So if it's with LEDs, you can't see it anymore. But with the old incandescent lights, you could actually see that they never actually went all the way out. They didn't have time to do that. But it's not complicated. When I first started maintaining and troubleshooting, and I would have a broken gate, I thought it was really complicated because I didn't understand how it worked. And in the old days, a lot of maintainers just wired them however it made sense to them, and they could make it really complicated. And some guys would use 6 wires, and but it's using the 3 wires. It's not complicated at all. And the wires, we get the gate cable, and it's got red, white, and green wires in it, and it makes it so much easier to do it. And using the common all the way through, and then you tie the first, second, and last light together with the other one so it stays lit all the time. Then the other 2 flash, and you have to get them, and this is an FRA and a PUC thing, the gate lights have to flash the same way the flashers flash. And they get butthurt if that isn't the case, and they'll write you up and you have to go fix it. And yeah, and making the gate lights flash with the mask, that's not hard either. Generally, what you do is, because the mask lights aren't color coded, they're just black wires or blue wires now that come down out of the mask, and you just move the wires around until you get it right. Greg, thanks for joining us. Samantha, I've been stuck at one and called the local PD to contact the railroad. There's a wives' tale about how long a train can block a crossing. There is no time limit on how long a train can block a crossing, and there's nothing law enforcement can do about it. The trains have the right of way. The trains own the right of way on the track, and they give the cities or the municipalities permission to cross those tracks at their discretion. And if a train's there for an hour, it's there for an hour. And that is why most cities, anyway, build at least a couple of overpasses or underpasses, because a train could be there all day long, and there's actually nothing. The railroads don't like to do that. They don't like to be bad neighbors. But if a train's broke or if there's a problem, that's just the way it is. And obviously, they don't want their trains sitting anywhere for 20 minutes anyway. They want them to get going. At Baker Street, right next to the Bakersfield Depot, where they used to do the crew changes, sometimes they would pull up there, and for some reason, the crew change would go wacky or whatever, and they would be there for a long time. Eastbound trains, even with the new office moved up, I don't know, quarter of a mile, they still get the train stretched out across Baker Street, and people piss and moan about it. But there are overpasses. Union Avenue overpass is only about a quarter of a mile one way, and the Beale Avenue overpass is right there. It's easy to get to. So, yeah. But, yeah, like I said, the railroads don't like to keep the trains blocked, and if the gates, okay, I misunderstood what you were saying, Samantha. I'm sorry. When the gates are stuck down, yeah, if they're down, they're down. I always tell people, never, ever, for any reason, go around gates if they're down, unless you're instructed to do so by a railroad employee or a law enforcement officer. If you go around gates, even if there's not a train within 10 miles, if you go around gates without being instructed to do so and a cop sees you do it, it's a very expensive fine. Maybe they'd let you off. I don't know, but I know that it's an expensive fine. It's the same. If once the lights start flashing, it is illegal to cross that white line. If they start flashing, you're supposed to stop right then. Trying to beat the gate is against the law. Once those lights start flashing, if you continue through the crossing and a cop sees you, it's the same thing as running a red light. They can give you a ticket that holds the same weight. I don't know that they do. I've never seen anybody. I was on an Operation Lifesaver train one time, and they were doing just that. They had police. This was in Fresno, and they had police at every crossing we went through. And every time somebody did that, they gave them a ticket. And so they will do it. But in general, when they're not running an operation like that, I don't know, maybe they will, maybe they won't. But I don't recommend trying to beat gates. The train's generally only going to hold you up for about 5 minutes. Even if they're moving pretty slowly, the 5 minutes is probably going to be about the longest time you have to wait. It's very rare to actually get caught up in gates that are down. If there's another crossing in the area, just go down to that crossing. But yeah, don't go around the gates. The cops will show up eventually, or, on the side of the case and on the mast, there's a little blue plate. And then on the side of the signal cabin, if you're on that side of the tracks, there's a number on the side. Call that number. Don't call the police. Call that number. That will get you in touch with RMCC, the risk management department, and they will contact Signal Ops, and Signal Ops will get somebody out there to see what's going on. Tim Lambert. Hey, Tim. How's it going? Thanks for inviting me to that chat thing last night. I didn't have much input, but hung around for a little while. Thanks. Okay. Yeah, Penny, enjoy taking Amtrak trips. I like to do that sometime. Other than the last time I rode an Amtrak, a bunch of us went, about 12 of us went up to Oakland to watch a Raiders game. And I'm not much of a drinker, but I was on that trip, and Amtrak doesn't care what you take on the train. And we took a lot of booze, and we started drinking when we left, and we didn't stop till we got back 3 days later. It was a lot of fun, but I don't remember a lot of it either. Hey, I was right about the GP9. Thanks, Samantha. And the only reason I know that is I have, as you see around me, I have books everywhere, and I've seen a lot of photographs of that stuff, and sometimes I do remember. Skid, would your signal job qualify you as an electrician? No, absolutely not. Nor would an electrician, being an electrician wouldn't qualify you to be a signalman. I have done things, and I have learned things about electrical. For one thing, my stepdad had an electrical business. He wired houses, and he was a commercial and residential electrician. So I learned how to wire houses working around him. But I don't like doing it. I'm not that kind of thing isn't my cup of tea. I'm not a construction guy. I'm not much of a handyman. When we remodeled our house just before I got sick, we put in new floors and all. Of course, we had that done. I'm not going to do that. But I put in all new light switches and all new outlets, took all the white ones out and put black ones and new plates and all that. And I did all that stuff myself, and I don't have to turn off the power to do it. I shocked myself a couple of times, but not going to kill you. I guess it can, but didn't kill me. But the actual electrician stuff and the kind of wiring we do in the signal department are two very different things. But I have wired in a couple of places where I've wired rectifiers in for people and standby batteries for their homes and their one was like a hunting thing where guys went out and stayed in the wintertime, and I wired a deal. Stuff like that the knowledge of railroad signaling helped out. Star Trek. I love Star Trek Enterprise, Brian Simpson. I really did. I would say that was my second favorite, right behind the original. I really liked Enterprise, except for the way they ended it. It still makes me mad when I think about it. They should have given it at least another season. That was probably the most dumb ending of any series I ever saw. I'm still mad about it. FRA gets butthurt about a lot of small things. Yeah, they do. And it depends, you know what? It depends on your inspector. Our inspector down on the south end, that guy was, oh gosh. I didn't care much for him because he was stupid. He would find these little things wrong and walk right over major things because he didn't know what he was doing. I thought I was going to throat punch one of my maintainers one time for pointing something. Oh, what about that? And it's like, oh, are you kidding me? But yeah, but the guy up north, smart dude. I used to call him when I wasn't sure about something I wanted to do and how it related to FRA stuff. And I'd call him and he would, yeah, go ahead and do this. Or no, I wouldn't do that. But he wasn't picky, and he didn't even come around very much. He lived up north somewhere, and he told me, dude, I'm not going to come down here and do an inspection on your stuff until they force me to. So that was cool. Hello from French National Railway Company. I hope I don't butcher your name. Akraf Soul. Is that, I don't know if that's your real name or if that's a nickname, but welcome. Thanks for showing up. Awesome. Broken track wires, something with the shunt, broken railroad. Okay, he's answering one of my earlier questions. Train girl video. No, Hey, want to say hi to everybody? It's my grandson, Zayden. Got in a fight with his girlfriend. He got a scratch on his. But he just got braces the other day. But some of you saw the video of the ride. We rode the dirt bikes a couple of weeks ago. We're going to go out again tomorrow, aren't we?
Yeah.
But this is Zayden. Zayden, this is everybody.
Hi.
What was you going to ask?
Can I clean his truck? You don't have to pay me.
The truck?
Yeah.
I don't care. He wants to wash the pickup. It's filthy. Train girl, back to that. Brian Simpson. No, I don't. Is it like a YouTube video or is it a music video or something? I don't know. No, I've never seen it though. Do you have block session for train circulation? Are you talking about Akraf? Are you talking about the whether we use what kind of signaling we use? Do you watch at a Clamperus? Mickey Rodriguez? What is that? Do you watch AC Lamperus? No, I don't. If you're asking, I've watched that. I don't know what it is. Revan Niaga, welcome. If I had to do all over again, would I become an engineer or conductor instead? No, absolutely not. No, not in a million years. I loved being a signalman. I thought it was the greatest job in the world. I really did. I loved it. I did it for 40 years and 37 if you count time I was laid off, but I really enjoyed it. And it was challenging and exciting. Sometimes it wasn't very fun because we really did work really hard a lot. The last 10 or 12 years of my career, I really didn't have to work. I had a lot of good guys working for me. And every time I'd start jumping in with a shovel or a digging bar, they'd say, hey, we got this. Don't worry about it. But it was still a really good job. We had a lot of fun. Me and my buddy Don are always talking about sometimes the good old days really weren't the good old days, but they were the good old days too. So yeah, no, I wouldn't be an engineer. That's not my cup of tea. G Skid, what made you move from Tehachapi to Bakersfield in your youth? I was born in Bakersfield. We moved to Tehachapi when I was 9 in 1969, and I lived up there through high school. Then I moved to Bakersfield to go to work. The only jobs at that time in Tehachapi were at the prison or at the cement plants, and I didn't want to do that. And I moved to Bakersfield not knowing what I was going to do, and I ended up getting a job driving trucks. When I was 18, they hired me, got my class 1, drove trucks for a while. Then I went to work on a drilling rig. My dad was an oil field guy, got me a job on a rig. I worked there for 3 months, and I've still not forgiven him for that. I did not like working on a drilling rig. I didn't care about the work. I was 18, 19 years old. I didn't care. I didn't care what I did, but I did not like the oil field. I didn't like the whole atmosphere. I didn't like a lot of the people, and I was really happy to quit and not do that anymore. But then right after I quit the oil fields, I moved back to Tehachapi, and that's when I got hired with the railroad. And I got laid off in 1980 at the end of August in 1980. And again, I worked for my stepdad, wiring houses and stuff for a little while, and I really didn't care for doing that. Wasn't bad work, but my stepdad, who I loved to death and still love, he lives in Missouri now, and great relationship, one of the greatest influences in my life. And I loved him to death, but he was a workaholic, and I wasn't. When it was quitting time, I wanted to go home. But so I moved to Bakersfield, started driving trucks again. I did that for about 1.5 years. And then I got a job running backhoes out in the oil field. And I loved running backhoes, but again, I was in the oil field, and I just did not like that whole atmosphere. And when I got called back in January of '84, I went to Tulare and worked on the gang up there until May. Then a job opened up in Tehachapi, and I moved back to Tehachapi. And I lived there until the end of 1993. Till the end of 93. And I moved to Bakersfield because my job kept moving this way. At first, when I took the maintenance foreman job, I went from Bakersfield to Highland out at the top of Cajon Pass, and from Daggett to Las Vegas. And then they gave the Vegas side back to the Nevada division, and they started moving my job district by district. It kept moving this way until eventually I had nothing. I didn't even have the Bakersfield district anymore. And so it didn't make sense to live in Tehachapi. I was tired of living there. Tehachapi, I spent a lot of time there. It's not the town I grew up in. It hasn't been for a long time. And it's kind of a touristy kind of place. And it's cute and all that stuff, but it's not the town I grew up in. I always tell people the only thing I miss about Tehachapi is the climate, because it's cooler up there than Bakersfield. But other than that, I'm glad I live in Bakersfield. C.A. Gorey, Calgary, welcome. You're welcome for the videos. I'm glad you enjoy them. I love shooting in my old territory. Shasta Lake, welcome. A clamper is an electronic circuit. A clamper is an electronic circuit. No, you want to come inside, everybody? Come on. No, I've got a full jug. Here's my wife, Jennifer. She's back to her natural red hair color. She walked out in the living room one night with that without telling me she was doing it. And I had a heart attack. I thought I had a new gal in the house. So she stuck this note in the door so she wouldn't bother me, asked me if I needed some more propels. But I always like showing her off. She's a trophy wife. Love you, babe.
Thank you.
A clamper is an electronic circuit that fixes either the positive or negative peak excursions to the signal defined. So you were asking me, do I know what a clamper is? I didn't know that's what it was called. When they sent us to the training began with electrocode, and then microlock worked differently. Electrocode used the strength of the signal was measured at the peak, and the micro lock was measured closer to the zero line. And I knew that they had ways of controlling that. I guess that's what you're talking. I never heard it referred to as that, but I guess that's what you're talking about. But no, I never heard it referred to as that. So yeah, learn something every day. Does Sigelman maintain the high wide detectors? Yes. Maintainers are responsible for the maintenance of all the detectors, high wides, hot boxes, hot wheels, Dragon equipment. We're responsible for maintaining it and testing it. We don't generally install it. That is usually done by a gang, a construction gang. But yes, we are definitely the ones in charge. I did a video on that. If you didn't see it, I did a video on, it's on the How the Signal Department Works playlist. And that's another thing. I always encourage people to go look at my playlists, and you can go to the playlist and find, so you don't have to, if you're looking for something specific, you can go to the playlist and find playlists that will likely be in. And I think they're in How the Signal Department Works and How Things Work on the Railroad. I think I have in both of those playlists the deal about all the detectors that we have. I went over those in pretty exhausting detail. Probably too much detail, but it is what it is. Mecha Redneck, great videos, Mark. Keep up the good work. I recommend your channel. Hey, awesome. I love it when I hear people say they recommend my channel. I hope the people you recommend it to have had the chance to check it out. He's good. I saw it when you were babysitting a high wide during a snowfall. Yeah, out at Summit, just east of Tehachapi. They would have us go out there and watch those things all night and keep the snow brushed away from the bottom, the emitters for the beams that they used for the high wide. And usually it was an exercise in futility because it either wasn't snowing enough to be an issue, or it was snowing too much for you to keep up with it. And finally, they got systems where I think they just kind of started turning them off while we were having those kind of snow. But yeah, that was actually a fun night. Made a lot of money. It was all overtime. That's when they send you home during the day to sleep, and you get paid for that, and then you go out on overtime and spend the whole night out there. And I didn't do a doggone thing except shoot videos and read. Are you coming out to the coast to make any videos? The California coast? I'm sure I will at some point. There are a lot of places out there I'd like to shoot. I just wish they had real trains out there. It's go out there and wait for 2 hours something, and an Amtrak goes by in 10 seconds. But I would like to go out there and do some history stuff, especially on the pass out there, Cuesta Grade. That would be cool. Just a matter of getting the right contacts and figuring out how to get to certain places, because I've never worked over there. Don't know where anything is. I don't know what, Riven Niaga, I don't know what the wage is right now. I don't even know what the wage of a signalman was when I retired. As a maintenance foreman, I was making about 40. I think I was making about $44 an hour, something like that. A signalman on the gang doesn't make that much hourly, but those guys work a lot of overtime and have a lot of other ways they can make money. Those guys actually make some pretty good chunks of change. I never worked much overtime. I didn't like overtime, but I would imagine, just guessing, they haven't had a contract upgrade since I left. I know that. So they're making whatever they made when I left. And I would think that it would be maybe in the mid or high $30 an hour range, something like that. Maintainers make a little bit more than signalmen, but maintainers can work a lot of overtime. It's easy in maintenance. It's easy. Even as a maintenance foreman, it would have been easy for me to make 6 figures a year. I turned almost all overtime down, so I only made over $100,000 a couple of times later in my career. But yeah, so it pays well. It pays well, and you have the perks of, if you're a maintainer, you have the perk of having your own truck and making your own schedule, and a lot of other perks that come along with the railroad that make it pay. Andrew Johnston from Liverpool in the UK. Awesome. I'm going to be doing a deal next week for all you that might want to join. It's going to be starting at 6 o'clock in the morning on next Saturday, and it's going to cover Europe and some of the places that are further ahead of us in time. I know that a lot of, and that's because a lot of people that are in that part of the world asked if I could do it in the afternoon. So I'm going to start it early here. I know that, what's it for? So what's it about? Wow, it's pretty late. What, 10 or 11 at night over there? Tom Trent, welcome. How does a railroad determine the weight of each car? Different cars that haul different things all weigh. The cars themselves have different weights, and then they are limited. If you ever notice on the side of a car, whatever kind of car it is, it usually tells you on there what its empty weight is and what its maximum loaded weight is. And that's determined by the construction of the car, I suppose. But the bulk cars, they generally try to load those to maximum capacity. Obviously, it helps the shipper out and it helps the railroad out. And they have scale tracks where they weigh, where cars are weighed, and they are, what am I trying to say here? That's all part of a formula of how they put trains together, is how much cars weigh and how much power they're going to put on a train for pulling uphill, and just as important, in some cases, more importantly, that they have enough dynamic braking to go down a hill. But as far as the cars themselves, that's all figured out in advance. Shasta Lake, did I work on the Valley sub? No, I never worked. The only sub I really ever worked on was what was called the old San Joaquin division during SP days, and UP, it was the California division, but I never worked any further north than Merced. That was the furthest territory I ever had north. I went north of there a few times on small projects, but I wouldn't say I ever worked up there. And I never worked any further south than Highland at the top of Cajon Pass. And the Valley sub is that up north somewhere? Valley sub. There it is. Valley sub. Oh yeah, from Roseville to Dunsmuir. No, I never worked anywhere north of Merced. Big sippy cup. Yeah, my jug. I had one just like it that said Papa's Jug on it, and it had Zayden's dirt bike number on this side, and I left it sitting in the parking lot at the hotel in Denver when I left. I set it down while I put all my crap in the truck and drove off and forgot it. So Jennifer got me another one. I keep this full of Propel 24 hours a day. Great Propel. And it is nothing more than a big sippy cup, because if it wasn't, I'd make a mess because I'm always knocking it over. 15 minutes to midnight. Man, you're a trooper. Ken S., thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed the chat. Yeah, New Zealand. Yeah, I knew it was going to be a pretty morning thing for you guys. I think I thought it was going to be 11 in New Zealand when it started, but I guess I had that wrong. I'm not used to using global time zones, but I'm glad you got on here. Said in I don't know if you caught my piece about the when I was talking about all this, but excuse me. But a lot of my, I have more viewers from Australia than I have from Canada. I thought that would be different for some reason, but I'm glad you're on here. I haven't seen any of my Aussie friends on here, but oh well. I wanted to make sure to include them in this. Yeah, G-Skid, you're right. They don't have to. It's not like the old days where they had to weigh each car individually and stop it, like you said. And a lot of that was done at industries in the old era, the Mono Cement plant. They would, and at Trona, they would weigh them at the industry. But they don't have to stop to weigh them. That, good grief, that'd take forever. SoCal Train Watcher, hey, how you doing? Thanks for joining. Wow, we've been on for almost 3 hours already. Awesome. All right. Well, it looks like it's kind of, oh, here we go. Oh, out in Arizona. Yeah, good place to watch trains, but is the wind still blowing? Good grief, that day I was out there, it was just whipping. Do I think the railroads will use all be battery powered? No, that's never going to happen. They will never be able to develop batteries that will provide enough power to propel a 10,000 ton train over a mountain like Tehachapi. They may be able to use them in certain places, and they will probably certainly start using that kind of a locomotive in switching operations. I'm surprised they haven't done it already, but I don't see that technology ever working out for heavy train moves on even light grades. I was watching a deal piece on battery evolution about a year ago, and they were talking to physicists, and they said there will be no more leaps forward in battery technology. They're up against physics about how batteries can work now, and now storage is the only thing they can work on, and they can make bigger batteries that can store more energy, but they're really limited as to how much of that energy can be used, that energy be turned into output. So I don't see that happening. I could be wrong, but nah, I don't think so. Wheel impact detectors, not that I know of. Reverend Niaga, no, I've never heard of a wheel impact detector. We have hot wheel detectors, but I don't know. Is that for, like, I'm assuming you're talking about that detect big flat spots? If that's the case, we don't have any out here. Brian Simpson. If that's the name of the last show they had, nope, it was not my favorite. Andrew Johnson. Yeah, they could certainly electrify the railroads. That wouldn't really. They could. I mean, electrified locomotives worked. They've worked all over the place. I don't know how effective it would be in pulling these gigantic trains that they have now. They would probably have to go back to running shorter trains that didn't weigh as much. Yeah, electrified railroads. There's the problem with that is you're back to because they're trying to get rid of the fossil fuels with the EV locomotives. Well, you're back to having to build more power plants to supply more electricity to run an electrified railroad. I think electrified railroads are great. They work great. They're very efficient, but there you are, back to more power plants burning coal or natural gas or whatever it is that the people are trying to get rid of. Yeah, I knew that they were running some experimental stuff over here, but it's highly experimental as far as what they're going to use it for. as far as using battery powered stuff to actually operate trains over the mountain, I don't think that'll happen. Yeah, you're right, Brian. Catenary requires a lot more maintenance. It's very expensive to install. It's expensive to maintain. I would think that they would probably, I don't know. I don't know a lot about electrified railroads, but if they were going to do that, they would probably use something through the rail rather than catenary. The technology exists to do that, so I'd have to see. Yeah, G-Skid, I understand that they can charge and recharge, but still the output is just not there for if you take off from Bakersfield and go to Tehachapi, then there's not enough of a downhill to use dynamics a lot to change to charge batteries. I don't know. It's like I said, I could be wrong. I'm not opposed to the technology. I just don't think it's just like right now. If it was a great technology, the semis would be using it until they can make that work for semis. They'll certainly never make it work for railroads for long haul purposes. Yeah, fool. And like I said, I'm not saying it's a bad idea. I just don't think its time has come, and I don't know that it ever will. Like I said, for helping, say if you have 5 locomotives in a train, 3 on the point and 2 distributed, and 1 or 2 of those are battery operated, maybe. But how much is that really going to help? I don't know. Wind and solar have nothing to do with charging. That's like the solar on your house. The solar doesn't run your house. It just puts energy back into the grid, and that's all the solar and wind and Tehachapi does. They just supply the grid. They don't have anything to do with anything. All that stuff goes into substations up there and is distributed out onto the grids of the main transmission lines that go through the area. Your solar runs your house. You must have some pretty trick solar, because I have solar and mine doesn't run my house. I don't know. You must not have very much stuff to run, because solar won't run a regular house. It just won't do it. Those people that live off the grid, I was watching a show a couple of years ago about them, and they have to really be mindful of what they do. They can't watch TV. They can't she can't use a hair dryer. None of that. It's crazy. Yeah, Revan. Yeah, that's what I thought you were talking about. Flat wheel detectors and stuff out around. I've never heard of any around here. I know that when they get to classification yards, that stuff's all inspected and looked at. So that's probably the way they do it here. And our classification yards aren't that far apart. So I guess they just rely on inspection. Brian, no, I actually I don't watch much television. I don't have much time for it. And I prefer to mess with my channel, my videos, and I like to read. So, yeah, I've heard about it's a series, isn't it? But I've heard about it, but I've not watched it. Yeah, Samantha, that's kind of what the maglev technology is that they're experimenting with in Europe. But those systems they're like we talked, they're so expensive to install and to maintain, and there again, you end up talking about having power plants that have to. So it's like the high-speed rail that they're building here in California. It's been canceled except for the part that was already under construction when Newsom took office. it's only going to be between Bakersfield and Madera, which is whatever. But they don't even have a way to power it right now. If not one rail has been laid yet, but they have the train that is supposed to have been built for it it's not even being built. And if they get it going right now, the plan is to just use diesel locomotives like the ones they use for Amtrak to run this. And there are so many problems with that. But yeah, it's there's a lot of problems with a lot of issues. I don't say problems, a lot of issues, a lot of hurdles that they're going to have to overcome if they want to do something like that. Yeah, G Skid. Yeah, I'm like I said, I'm surprised they haven't gone to primarily battery switch, because I imagine those are going to be really expensive too. The battery powered locomotives, but I'm surprised that they haven't started initiating. I'm surprised they hadn't started initiating it over the last decade. But yeah, I can't see any reason at all why it wouldn't be all battery powered switching. That would be a great idea. Yeah, I realize maglev is high maintenance too. It's experimental, and it's never going to be. It will never be in freight. That's not what it's designed for. But I was just using that as an example of what they can do if they set their minds to it. Yeah, fool. Yeah, maglev's a highly technical, expensive experimental thing, but I still think it's cool. It's like the California high-speed rail. I'm vehemently opposed to it because we can't afford it right now. It's just the section they're going to build is so far over budget of what the whole thing was supposed to cost, and it's already 10 years behind, and it's just a boondoggle. But the technology is cool. I mean, I'm not opposed to the technology. I just, there again, it's something that's time hasn't really come yet in California anyway. Yeah, our power grid in California is so hopelessly overloaded. When I bought this house, I lived close to a fire station, and they said, "Oh, you're on a grid that doesn't get it." We live on a grid that is never going to be affected by rolling blackouts, but we still have blackouts when, sometimes it just gets overloaded, and it's not a rolling blackout, but we still have them. So, yeah. Too many people and too little power. The Siemens locomotive plant in Sacramento. No, I've been through Sacramento dozens of times, but I've only been to Sacramento a couple of times. And I've not visited. I've been to the California State Rail Museum and a couple of other historic places around Sacramento. And I've been to the outdoor national motocross race out in Rancho Cucamonga, but I've never been to that plant. No. Yeah, Samantha, that's generally my opinion. It's like I said, I don't know. I'm just a guy that used to work for the railroad. I can't predict how all this stuff's going to come out, and it certainly could happen eventually. Yeah, they're doing so many things with power now, getting rid of stuff. I don't know. I don't understand it, and I don't try because it doesn't matter. They're going to do what they're going to do, and it doesn't matter how I feel about it, what I have to say about it. All I can do is piss and moan, and I try not to do that. I always tell people if I want to be upset, all I got to do is open up my bill box. I don't need any external stuff to get me wound up. All right. Well, folks, it is a little bit after 4 here in Bakersfield, and I've got a couple of things I need to take care of this afternoon. So I'm going to close down. I'm going to shut this off. I really, really appreciate everybody who showed up. I appreciate all the interaction and all the questions. I hope that I was able to answer questions that you had without being too confusing. And I'm sorry for any of the answers that I didn't have. Riven Nega, I will answer this. What was the worst injury I ever got on the job? Riven, I broke one of my fingers one time, smashed it with a hammer, but I didn't report it because way back then I was still smoking pot. So I didn't say anything because I didn't want to get in trouble. So, yeah, other than that, I never got injured on the job. All right, everybody. Good night. Good afternoon. And I'm going to be up again at 6 a.m. California time next Saturday. If you want to jump on again, that's fine. But I really enjoyed this. Everybody take it easy, and we'll see you on the next video. Be well. The next video is going to be about insulated joints. That'll come up Tuesday. So check it out. All right. As always, remember to like, share, and subscribe, and click on the bell if you want to be notified of future content. Shoot me an email at motorpoet59@gmail.com if you have any ideas or comments. All right. See y'all later. Take care.